The back door handle turned slowly from the outside. The back door clicked open, the fold table by the row of dryers tipped over for no visible reason, and a small paper boat, one we didn't own, floated across the floor like it had been pushed by a breeze. It was the last week of October. I was scheduled to open the laundromat at midnight and work until 6. The place was on a quiet strip, one of those 24-hour spots that looked busier on paper than in reality. Most nights I'd get a couple of people in and out, a late trucker, someone dropping off comforters. Usually it was just me, the humming machines and the fluorescent lights that never shut off. On a Tuesday around 2:30 a.m., I was folding towels when I heard a sound I couldn't place, soft scratching, like fingernails on cardboard, coming from the back room where we kept the old change machine and extra detergent. The sound stopped as soon as I looked up. I told myself it was rats and went back to folding. The fluorescent lights made everything seem pale and unreal. The hum of the dryers covered 1,000 little noises. A week later, the same sound woke me from a doze. This time it was a slow, deliberate sliding, like something being pushed across cement. It came from the door that led to the alley, the one we kept chained but unlocked during business hours. I stood, watched the wall clock tick to 3:14 a.m., and switched off the music on the radio so I could listen. The sound moved along the back wall, paused by the maintenance closet, then stopped. I told myself it was the wind. The city wind makes everything sound guilty at night. 2 nights after that, a customer came in around 3 a.m. She was older, late 40s maybe, hair in a messy bun, bulky jacket even though it wasn't cold. She dropped a single load, paid with exact change, and sat in the corner by the vending machine. She didn't look up. When she left behind a small tote bag on the bench. I called out, but she'd already pushed the glass door and walked into the night. The bag had a few mismatched socks and a folded photo, face down. I waited until she was gone, then picked up the photo and flipped it over. It was a picture of a woman and a little girl in front of an old house. Someone had written on the back in black ink, "Do not ever open the floor." I thought it was a joke. The next morning the manager called and told me the coin changer was jammed. I went to the back room to check and found the wooden crate we stored extra rolls of quarters in had been moved. There were dust marks on the floor, like something heavy had been dragged. The crate itself had a long, shallow scratch along the bottom, almost like a nail had been used to pry it. I cleaned up and locked the back door extra tight, but I didn't tell anyone about the note. It felt childish to say I found a warning in a laundromat. 3 nights later the laundromat's CCTV recorded something I still can't explain. At around 4:02 a.m., the cameras show the shop empty, machine spinning, no customers aside from the old man who was folding on camera 2. Then, for exactly 23 seconds, a shadow crosses the lobby from left to right, a dark smear, not like a person, more like someone walking just outside the door and a sliver of them passing by the threshold. The timestamp flickers oddly during that interval, stuttering 1 frame behind real time. I watched it a dozen times, frame by frame. The shadow has no feet, it glides. I ran my fingers over the monitor glass and it was cold. I started checking the alley every hour. I told myself the cameras must be faulty, that my eyes were tired. On the 5th night after the photo, I found new scratches, this time on the underside of the mop bucket handle, and a smear of something dark on the cement beneath the back steps. It looked like oil, but it was thicker, tacky when I touched it on a gloved finger. I washed it off and the pad of my finger came away with a faint smell, damp, like mildew and old cloth. A customer came in one night at 1:10 a.m. He was jittery and smelled like he had been running. He paid in cash, put his change in his wallet, and when he left, he dropped his key on the counter without taking it. I picked it up and it had a small number tag, B12. I called after him but he'd already gone. An hour later, the same customer returned, white-faced, and asked if anyone had seen a little girl. When I said no, he just stared at me and smiled like he was trying to remember a name. He walked out and didn't come back. The breathing calls started around the same time. My phone would light up with unknown caller, and if I answered there would be nothing but heavy breathing. Not a breath you'd expect from someone running, slow, measured, like someone who was lying down. Sometimes, if I answered, I could hear a faint radio in the background, a station I couldn't identify, and a muffled clink like a glass against metal. I never talked back, I'd hang up. The calls continued for 2 weeks, sometimes twice a night, sometimes 3 or 4. One morning, I found a shoebox under the folding table. It was taped shut, brittle tape, the kind they use on moving boxes. Inside, a small pair of toddler shoes, a folded scrap of blanket and, tucked on top, another photo with handwriting, "She's under the floor." The edges of the photo were damp. I told myself enough was enough. It was too strange. I called the manager and told him to come in the next night and meet me at 2 a.m. He asked why, and I said there had been weird noises and a customer left a bag. He laughed it off. He'd been working budget jobs for years, nothing fazed him. But he came. At 1:50 a.m. the next night, I locked the front door and sat in the office with the lights off, laptop open to the CCTV feed. The manager arrived at 2:05, coffee in hand, grumbling. We watched the monitors together. At 2:27, we both saw it, the back door handle turned slowly from the outside, as if someone was standing there and pushing their weight into the bar. We looked at the back lot camera and saw nothing, just empty chain link fence and a trash can. The back door clicked open and the hall outside slid light over the concrete floor. No one walked in. The front bell didn't ring. But on camera 1, the fold table by the row of dryers tipped over for no visible reason and a small paper boat, one we didn't own, floated across the floor like it had been pushed by a breeze. We drove to the back and the alley was empty. There were watermarks along the wall like wet footprints, and the cement was cold and sticky in patches. We searched under the dumpsters and behind the pallets of detergent. In the maintenance closet, behind the stacked cardboard boxes, there was a loose floorboard we'd never noticed. It didn't match the rest, the edges were newer, as if someone had cut it out and replaced it badly. The manager pried it up with a crowbar. Underneath was a crawl space about 3 feet deep and maybe 8 feet long. It smelled like wet cloth and old fabric. At the far end, bundled in what might once have been a blanket, was the outline of a small figure. It wasn't a shape I wanted to name. I reached in and touched fabric that was stiff and cold. There was no breathing. We called the police. The officers were efficient and professional, as they should be. They called in forensics and the coroner. The child had been dead a long time. The report would later say hypothermia and exposure compounded with something like neglect. I can't explain how something that small could have gone unnoticed. We were all asked a lot of questions about customers, about whether anyone had seen anyone living in the crawlspace. We all said no. The coroner said the body had been there for weeks, possibly months. Nobody had noticed smell or movement because the HVAC pushed air through the floorboards and masked the odor, he said. It sounded like jargon. After they took the body away, the manager tried to act like it was an isolated tragedy, something out of the blue. He closed for a day while forensics worked. The news came and went. People said things on the internet, conspiracy folks, late-night commentators, then they moved on. I think we all wanted to move on too. But 3 nights after the coroner took the child away, everything at the laundromat changed. The radio started cutting out at odd times. The fans would spin up to 10 seconds of noise and then settle. At 3:03 a.m. one night, the CCTV captured a shadow in the alley again. This time it lingered at the back door, stationary, then tilted like someone peering. After 27 seconds, it stepped away and vanished into the dark. On the monitor, a wet footprint appeared on the concrete, as if someone had walked away. No one found who left it. The security tape for that hour had been corrupted, one frame missing right where the shadow walked through. I quit 2 weeks later. My hands still smell faintly of bleach when I wake up from a nap. Sometimes when the wind picks up in the apartment I lived in, I imagine the sound of tiny shoes skittering across a floor. I keep thinking about the photo, the woman and little girl on the porch, the handwriting, "Do not ever open the floor." I don't know why someone would write that and then leave it with mismatched socks in a tote bag and never come back. Sometimes I answer calls in the middle of the night just to hear the heavy breathing. It's always the same. Not a laugh, not a voice, just that slow, patient inhale and exhale, like someone waiting for help they never got.